All kinds of diseases are, follow it at the end of the day. Some people get back to their homes only to meet the hippopotamus and crocodiles inside their homes because the flood carries such animals into people's houses. As I mentioned, the education. There's a map. Go down. When we do our prediction, we give you what is most likely going to happen in the country. For instance, for 2024, we have predicted that not less than 144 local government areas in Nigeria from 31 states will be heavily impacted by flood in the course of the year. 1,448 years in 31 states will be heavily impacted. And additional 249 LGS in the whole country, including Abuja, will suffer another degree of flooding incidents in the course of the year. When we issue the advisories, governors have been notified ahead of time, and they are expected to cascade the information to the communities to take necessary actions on what you should do to your environment. The red color shows you where it will be heavily impacted. The yellow follows to another degree. But we are not unmindful of climate change issues. There are some locations where you predict it might be very hard, might be moderate, or where you say it might be moderate, might eventually end up being so hard. We produce what we call flood vulnerability map, with which we can guide developers, guide the states when they want to put structures, whatever they want to do, so that you don't do it within the confines that the flood was possessed in the course of the year. We talk about groundwater modeling. In some parts of Nigeria, due to groundwater being mined, it has led to depletion of the groundwater. So we have to do some studies to tell you this is how much you can absorb water in such an environment. Like in Medugri, for instance, and Yobe, they are going to the third aquifer level, 250 to 600 millimeters depth, because the first aquifer level had been exhausted. They were mining the water, no replenishment or recharge. When there are so much details in the document, which I know it will be made available to whoever needs it. That way, the way you read it better, you will understand. The issue is this: with the hydrological data, whether you are building your airports, highways, your drainages, your bridges, you need the hydrological data. Whether it is dams, irrigation facilities, you need the hydrological data. CCECC is building some railway lines in Nigeria. They have to call. Please give us data about these rivers will be crossing from Ada to Kano. Let us know the level of water in this over the years so that we know how we can size our bridges that will carry the railway lines. So hydrological data has application in several aspects of our national life. Let me say thank you. Eventually, I couldn't become a highway engineer. I don't know. I ended up with this one over 30 years. I wanted to go into highway, but see where I'm talking about water. Thank you. God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can do a better applause for our dear Engineer Clement O. Nze, the Director General and CEO, Nigerian Hydrological Services Agency. Please put your hands together for him for that wonderful and insightful keynote.
What could happen in 2024 about flood in Nigeria? Their own local government, you can look out for it. This is a Oka. What the? You should find out whether you are safe. We were in Anambra in 2018 to inform about the flood in Nigeria. The man in charge of forest management said he's not coming. We finished our work and left around 16th of June 2018. By 27, Anambra was inundated and the newspapers reported. the village of former vice president, the village of governor, the village of Soludo had been submerged by water. I said that is correct. It's good to listen to all.
Very many thank you. Once more, ladies and gentlemen, can we applaud the keynote presenter? Before I move straight into the next item, I'd like to quickly recognize some personalities who are yet to be recognized. I'd like to first of all recognize some of the heads of department whose names have been mentioned. I'd like to recognize the head of civil engineering, Dr. Chitendo Ikegwane. Can we applaud him, please? We also have the head of metallurgical and materials engineering, Engineer Professor ICE Ezema. Can we also appreciate him? And we also have the head of the newest department in the faculty, the Department of Nuclear Engineering, talking about Engineer Dr. Abo Cornelius. Can we appreciate these ones? And so, ladies and gentlemen, we also have some other eminent personalities who are here. Here with us, we have the manager, Nigerian Bottling Company, popularly known as Ama Breweries, Night Mile. We have here with us, I'd like to invite him to the high table. He's also an awardee in this very auspicious occasion. Engineer Peter Andy, you're most welcome. Please, can we appreciate him and welcome him to the high table. I'd like to very respectfully recognize the presence of all members of the Senior Staff Club who are here in their numbers. And most importantly, I'd like to crave indulgence to recognize the President of the Senior Staff Club of our great university, talking about Dr. Chibi, the most recognized. Let me also recognize Engineer L.M. Obi, who is here seated. I'd like to also recognize the former Director of Works of our great university, Engineer Tochubu of Sabebe. And so, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to announce the presence of the Director of National Center for Energy Research and Development, UNN. Engineer Dr. Izuchukwu Francis Okafor is here with us. Can we applaud him? And at this point in time, without much ado, I'd like to quickly go into the next program, and that is to invite the Associate Professor Boniface Anyaka to step up and take the citation of our amiable lecturer for today, talking about the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Nigerian Communications Satellite, an amiable lady of substance, talking about Engineer Mrs. Jane Egerton-Idehen. Please, can we appreciate her and put our hands together as I ask her to please stand for her citation.
Thank you, Okura. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, the chairman of this great occasion, members of the high table, great Ababites, great lions and lionesses, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I have here citation on Engineer Mrs. Jane Egerton-Idehen, the 20th Herbert Macaulay Memorial Lecture Series 2024 guest lecturer. The engineer lady you see standing before us is Engineer Mrs. Jane Egerton-Idehen, an elegant and illuminating woman engineer. Engineer Mrs. Jane Egerton-Idehen is a tech giant executive, an author, and an angel investor. She is currently the Managing Director and Chief Executive of the Nigerian Communications Satellite Limited, the nation's foremost agency in charge of managing the operations and services of the communication satellites owned by Nigeria. She was the head of state, Middle East and Africa for Facebook. Prior to that, She was the country manager, Nigeria and divisional sales director for the West African branch of Avanti Communication Group PLC, a satellite company based in the United Kingdom with a fleet of satellites. She cumulatively spent 13 years in sales and management in the telecommunication infrastructure giant Ericsson. She also worked as a cluster lead for Nokia Siemens network in West Africa. We shall be clapping as we applaud. Thank you very much. Engineer Mrs. Jane Egerton-Idehen was born and raised in Lagos, Nigeria. She graduated with a second-class upper division degree in electronic engineering in 2001 from the University of Nigeria in Nsukka, where the dignity of man is being restored. She later furthered her education at Warwick Business School in the United Kingdom, where she received a master's degree. Thank you very much for that clapping. She also received an executive education at both Harvard Business School and the Yale School of Management in the United States. Jane has worked in the telecommunication industries in Africa for more than 17 years. Prior to working for Meta and Avanti, she worked for Nokia and Ericsson companies. Her knowledge of technology and her ability to manage complex stakeholder relations are keys to her success. Engineer Mrs. Jane Egerton-Idehen is one of the few females heading key business areas in the tech industry. This has exposed her to numerous professional and personal challenges peculiar to women. Spurred by discussion with fellow female executives around the globe, Jane organized a forum at Ericsson in which emerging and experienced female leaders could support each other in developing their careers. The overwhelming success of the forum led to her to create Women and Career to reach women beyond her organization and to support girls seeking career after school. So we can see her passion for young ladies, our girls, school girls, and so on. This organization can be found. We can go to www.womencareer.com to see what actually she is doing. In March 2020, Jane published a book titled Be Fearless. Give yourself permission to be you. An idea she drew from her more than 50 years of experience as a telecommunication executive in Africa to help women build lasting careers, especially in the male-dominated STEM industries. This book hit 7 Amazon bestseller lists on March 17, 2020, climbing all the way to number 1. Jane's passion for promoting girls in science, technology, engineering, and math STEM can be traced to her undergraduate days as a member of the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, the IEEE. Along with the late Clementina Salua Ni Ubiagara. She co-founded IEE Women in Nigeria. Can we give a hand for that? Jane has continued to be actively involved in speaking to girls and women about STEM careers. She has spoken at the TEDS program, the African Science Academy, Ashesi University in Ghana, and the CFA staff of Hangouts. The latter program, founded by Chukwuemeka Fred Agbata Jr., allows African entrepreneurs to meet the network and learn so that their startups can excel. Jane has also spoken at several television programs. It is important to know that Jane does volunteer work for the ACE Foundation, Young Career and Graduate Mentorship Program. She is an aspiring fellow for the Aspen Global Leadership Institute. She was a board member of the Ericsson Diversity and Inclusion and a Momo Maternity, a retail division of Teleference Solutions. As a home girl at heart, she is active in giving back to the Ajegunle community of Lagos through the Zozo network. I'm quite sure that she's willing to give back to the University of Nigeria. Some of the Jane Egerton-Idehen work is numerous, but I'm going to mention but a few, because if I start listing them here, it will take me 1 hour to do the listing, because I'm numerous. So we can find here that Jane had a lot of speaking in the Lincoln Community School, Accra, about 2017. African Science Academy, Tema, Accra, about 2016. Akukwa Kente here Foundation, Ebiri Hills, Accra, about 2016. Asheshe Innovation Experience, Asheshe University, August 2016. The Long Star FM Accra, about 2017. Tech Trends Nigeria Channels TV, about 2017 September. Think Breakfast Series Nigeria, 2017. And so many and so many. Can we give a hand for that? Her recent speaking events and women and career sponsorships. We have them like Change Market Innovation Challenge Foundation, 2019. Wiki Loves Women, 2019. Joyous Fashion Brunch, 2019. Nigeria Com, 2019. There are so many of them. And we start naming them, we will not want to listen to our voice again. So, because an outstanding woman, an engineer, is going to speak to us today, we would want to make this brief and then listen to her golden voice. Engr Jane, as a home girl, as we said, is active in the Ajegunle community from where she grew up. And we have said that she's equally willing to give back to us here in Nsukka, the University of Nigeria. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Engineer Mrs. Jane Egerton is a woman of many potentials. We can see from her citation that she's a woman of many potentials. An extrovert and a physical fitness proponent, an advocate, an exceptional woman engineer that supports everything good. She likes everything good. I think that is why she's here equally, because the University of Nigeria is a good university. Jane is happily married to her husband, Egerton-Idehen, with 2 children, a son, Asher, and a daughter, Sarah. These children inspire her, Jane, to push further for diversity in male-dominant fields. Mr. Vice Chancellor, the Chairman, great advice, great lions and lionesses, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, permit me at this point to present to you all here this illuminating engineer Mrs. Jane Egerton, as the 20th Herbert Macaulay Memorial Lecture Series 2024 guest lecturer.
Shall we rise to welcome the first female Herbert Macaulay lecturer of the great university? Shall we rise to welcome the Managing Director and CEO of Nigerian Communications Satellite? Please put your hands together. Let's celebrate her. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. You may be seated. I was going to start by saying I woke up this morning in my hotel room to the sonorous voice of Papa Diogum. I smiled and I said I'm home. I would love to acknowledge the Vice Chancellor who stepped out, Professor Charles. I read the chicken boy. It's really an honor to now get to see him in person. And all the amazing work. You know, Prof, I thought you stepped out. Good to see you. I don't want to stand on all existing protocols. I'm calling out names. Professor Paul, okay, Chairman of the day. I really want to acknowledge you. I went to, okay, that's fine. He's been very supportive. Dean, Professor Minike, he came to my office like three or four times. At some point I had to give him. It was like, he was so persistent. We'll come to that. My fellow DG, Engineer Clement, I really want to appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much. I know we have some very interesting personalities, but I really want to acknowledge all the deans of faculties, the heads of departments, the professors all gathered. And when they were reading out the names, I'm like, it is such an honor to be here. The alumni, I must call out the fact that I appreciate that great Abermans, where they great. It's good to have them here. And the Lion and Lionesses. We also have the media, actually, the gentlemen of the press. I would appreciate that they are here. My lovely students seated there. It's always great to see students. Yes. I also want to call out some people from the industry that came. You know, we mentioned a couple of people. It's a story and not, you know, wherever I go, I think it's good to know that because I've been in the sector always supports. The Chief Enterprise Officer of MTN, thank you so much. And the ex-Chief Experience Officer for MTN, Engr Jane, thank you so much. Different MDs from the sector, Tola Yusuf of Infotel, the owner of Daily Times, Fidelis, you cannot have. Thank you so much. Get through the HOD for Unitel, thank you so much. I must say that I have my staff here, so I should acknowledge the Microsoft staff. So these are the staff of the Nigerian Communications Satellite. I see you. Thank you so much. Friends, our great line of lionesses. It's great to have everyone here. I wanted to start this lecture by just bringing us back to what I think is really important, which is the fact that we do this not just because it's easy. I know it's not easy to bring this up. It's not easy. But I don't think it was also easy for Herbert Macaulay if you know his story as well. We do things that are hard because in doing that we push not just the nation but our generation forward. So it's very great to see that we have the students here. So let's start with the title of today's lecture. And I linked into the theme of the lecture actually. championing innovation, a look at digital transformation in terms of economic diversification in Nigeria. But I thought, what a good way than to own it. So I decided to throw in an Igbo proverb there. We say that, for those of you that are not Igbo, it loosely translates to, you do not actually stand in one spot to really enjoy and experience the masquerade. And the Igbos are known for the masquerade. So, in very loose terms, they actually could mean something like there are different ways to skin a cat. You know, someone said that skin a cat is quite brutal, but it could mean something like that. But what I'm actually saying is, really inviting you, my erudite, learned audience, to reconsider, take a different vantage point. Let's change slightly how we see diversification of our economy. And in order to consider this different view, just try a different option at this complex problem solving. I'm asking that we consider economic growth and diversification from the viewpoint of digital transformation. They say that information travels at the speed of light. Even my prof used to tell me that in the middle days. But today it's not just traveling at the speed of light. It's actually transforming every fabric of our society. There's a recent study that says that ICT, or this digital transformation, has the potential to add almost $5 trillion to the global GDP in 2025. So it's not just about latest gadgets and all the things that are happening. It's actually the ability to use technology to create new opportunities, to improve efficiency, to empower people. So this morning, let's view this massive masquerade. I just love it because someone called me today, no, I said, okay, maybe the masquerade is going to stay true. Let's view it from a different angle. So I aim to actually examine digital transformation in Nigeria as a pathway to economic diversification. I want to talk about some concepts I've used. I will talk about drivers of innovation. I think you start to get the point that I was long lecturing, isn't it? My classmates can tell. I will look at an overview of digital transformation and economic diversification in Nigeria. I will throw in some case studies. You always have to throw in case studies. Then we'll look at the challenges. How can we make it viable in terms of digital transformation in Nigeria? Then we should conclude with a way forward. It's always good to have some kind of recommendation. So concepts I would like to just clarify why we start. Innovation. There are all kinds of definitions out there. For me, just simply implementing new ideas, creating value. And creating value in a way that it results in the introduction of goods and services that improves the outcome of the market. It brings efficiency, effectiveness, it improves quality. So if I round it up, you always have to do a consistency. I want to lean into what Peter Druff has said. He says that innovation is the specific function of entrepreneurship, where an existing business or a public service institution, or maybe a new venture that is started by a lone individual, maybe some lone person in his family kitchen. That entrepreneur is now able to create new wealth-producing resources, endorse existing resources with enhanced potential, and ends up creating wealth. I really like that definition because I think it's going to take us down the journey where we are headed to. I also want to clarify what I mean by digital transformation. And for me, digital transformation is just that process of using digital technologies. Call it robotics, AI, machine learning, IoT, biotechnology, blockchain technology. All this technology to radically transform existing traditional and non-digital businesses. Because most times people think engineering is just for engineers or technology, we leave it to the technology people. But I'm sure most people in the industry will say differently because now we're all using computers. Sometimes you don't even know how they created it, but we all have to use computers. Even our mobile phones are mini computers. So we need to recognize that value that it brings to the economy. Then I want to talk about economic diversification. Because it's a word we throw around a lot, especially looking at our current situation. Everybody's thinking about how can we improve the economy. But one of the biggest things we've had, especially post the peak in the 1970s with the oil, is the fact that we have been looking for ways to diversify our economy. So for me, it is shifting an economy away from what we call a single income source. So in the case where you're predominantly just dependent on one economy, you shift it to multiple sources. You grow a range of sectors or markets. So that process could include many forms. You could move a country from a primary sector, maybe a competitive sector, like in the case of Nigeria, or maybe in the case of Saudi, in the Middle East, that competitive sector is oil. You could move it to a more distributed one, where you have other sectors that also pull their weight. But sometimes you just take a simple structure. If your economy had a simple structure, you move it to a more complex or formidable structure. Sometimes it's also a move from natural resources. You're dependent on natural resources. You take it to non-natural resources. So there are different ways, like we say, we're going to scale this down. But the different forms, that is the definition of economic diversification. Now for today's lecture, I want to look at it from the angle of moving it from a primary sector, just one primary sector, to a more complex and advanced structure. I want to look at what we have done in other countries, countries like China, Korea, UAE, Finland, Estonia, Saudi Arabia, in the Middle East. How they have done that, that's what I want to consider. And I want to look at diversification of the economy as it impacts. We're going to look at it through the lens of contributing to the growth of capital, which is your GDP. Because for me, that's a key and important metric in measuring economic growth. A lot of us, we use GDP to do that. So that said, let's talk about digital transformation and economic diversification in Nigeria. And I want to tell it as a story because we have a lot of people, I must acknowledge a lot of people in the sector here. And for most of us, I think the story is not new. We can all relate. In the early 2000s, when President Obasanjo came in his second stint as president, he was implementing wider economic reforms. He privatized a lot of the sectors, public enterprises, and we wouldn't forget that he also deregulated the telecom industry. Stay with me, please, because even I was thinking 40 pages. I hope I don't bore you. So what happened when he did that is that that deregulation kind of increased private participation in the economy. And we saw it in terms of local and foreign investment coming into our nation's economy. But I think I want to look at through the lens of technology. We saw it by seeing global players in the telecommunications sector coming in. We all know MTN, isn't it? So MTN came, Airtel came, Airtel was there, of course, revamped. Later on, Globacom actually came, and Etisalat actually came. So we actually witnessed some kind of unprecedented surge in digitalization without knowing. I think it was an accidental actually. I believe it was, because I think the goal when he did that was privatizing, deregulating. Then he wanted to also provide accessibility and affordability. That was the intent when it was done. But he ended up doing much more than that. So by therefore privatizing and increasing private participation in that industry, we saw that it boosted a lot of foreign investment, it created job opportunities, it enhanced commercial activities, production, just basic things, just access for people. For companies, just the fact that you have staff that can now have mobile internet. During COVID, think about COVID. A lot of people during COVID work from all kinds of places. Nothing could stop you, you still work. A lot of us had to access services only through digital platforms. Schools had to use digital platforms. Even to see the doctor, you had to dial in and do a VC call. So you could start to see what mobile internet, mobile connectivity has done. So for consumers, I see it as creating convenience. It improves communication, access to information. Even in terms of consumption of entertainment, those of us that like to watch social media, Nollywood movies, we can now do that from anywhere. It also improved the use of utility apps, and I will come there because it created tech-enabled businesses. It changed the way traditional businesses operated. We saw that. It created new markets, new subsectors. We saw new local tech companies emerge. All of a sudden, we saw companies like Main One. You know Main One, isn't it? That's an indigenous company that does fire, subsea fire. But it was actually Volvo. Companies like Blackstone, they will do data center. Companies like Vodacom Business. So we saw all these companies coming, Fintech companies started coming in just because we could provide mobile internet. Payment companies like InterSwitch that were doing clearing, eTransact, Jobberman, Packetech, Flutterwave, Paystack, the list will go on and on and on. But interesting is also we had disruptive tech startups that came in. What they did is that they changed the way traditional businesses were actually operating. So you have things like Andela that did outsourcing, not the traditional way. Hotels for LNGs. Some of us probably have used it. If you use it's similar to if you had to do Airbnb. So in the good old days, that's not how you book a hotel. You actually have to call, ring, send an email. Now you go to an app or a website and you can make your booking. We have companies like Seamless HR, offering HR solutions, Reliance Health, in terms of health insurance. New banks that started coming in. I'm sure a lot of us must have noticed. Sometimes I ask me, what's the difference between GT Bank, First Bank, and OPay? Why do you all lean towards OPay? I don't need to answer that. I'm sure a lot of people here, students can tell. But we have these new banks that came because they were disrupting traditional sectors. OPay, BPay, Kuda Bank, then also traditional sectors benefited. Agri, finance and banking, retail, manufacturing, because they use this technology to actually improve their costs, become more efficient. So the way I see it was win-win, everybody won. Everybody won. They won on the efficiency brought by digitization, they automated their business process, they had access to large markets. That's one of the things we benefited. Because you could reach anyone. Today, you go to Instagram, and you decide you want to sell something. The person even trying to buy it from you can be in the middle of nowhere. You have no barrier in terms of access to market. Your problem will even be how to deliver that product to them. Case in point, me. I remember refurbishing my house in Lagos and I told someone that 90% of the vendors I used to refurbish my house, I found them on Instagram. When I travel, my assistant can speak to that. To get all the things I need, makeup artists, but just the ones that women make. I just go to Instagram. I don't even know them. We just go there and we find them. So what it's been doing is actually creating for us new sectors, sub-sectors. And I think that graph shows it because you can see what the GDP has been since we commenced on our ICT journey. I'm very happy NCC is here because I got that data from them. Now when we started, in terms of our GDP, ICT probably just contributed about less than 1%, 0.6% in 2001. By 2013, ICT was doing 8.5%. As I speak to you, Q1 of this year, ICT is doing 17% of the nation's GDP. So apart from the leading sector, which is currently agriculture, ICT is your number 2. When we look at teledensity, so teledensity is the way we measure in terms of the number of telephones or mobile phones you have, in terms of the cluster of individuals. So the cluster of individuals, amongst 100 people, how many people have phones? When we started our journey in the early 2000s, just one, okay, let's run this up, it's 1.8, 2 people would have a phone amongst the 100 in a cluster. By 2002, it moved. Then by 2013, it was about 90%, so about 90%. So if it's 100 people, 90 people will have phones amongst the 100. As I speak to you, December 2023, NCC reports that our tele-density is 103. That means amongst 100 people, we have 103 phones. So we have dual SIMs for our phones. So people actually have 2 phones. Now what does this mean? It means that we actually started a journey. Stay with me. Just view that masquerade from where I'm viewing it. We've already started in diversification, not like it hasn't started. Because as we speak, 40% of our GDP in 2010 has been straight from different sectors like agriculture and ICT, but we have already started to rebalance it. So that journey has started. But I think the journey needs to be intentional, we need to be focused, Because from the metrics from where we see it, it might be the best way to skin this cat. The price per barrel of oil needed for Nigeria to balance the balance sheet is $139 per barrel. It is very difficult to maintain that, especially post-COVID. We're not alone, so don't think that we're alone in this journey. A country like Saudi, which was one of the top 10 as well, but they need just about $83 per barrel, so they are fine. UAE needs about $67 per barrel. So you start to see how vulnerable we are to fluctuating oil prices. It exposes us to external shocks. And we can't definitely sustain our growth if we are only dependent on one primary sector. What it has done for us is created two key issues. One, it's almost difficult, our inability to meet our budgetary demands. I heard the VC talking today about, schools and funding for schools in the morning when we were having a courtesy call. And he even mentioned it here, the fact that maybe at some point only the DGs can afford to pay their power bills. It is true that we are struggling now to meet our budgetary demands because our oil funds has always met most of our capital expenditures, and we cannot continue to do that. Secondly, we start to see that that vulnerability in oil prices or in the oil sector always affects our general society. Once oil price goes up, everything goes up. Even the price of a car. I hope it doesn't go up. Even the price of a car might go up, but everybody then has a reason to increase transportation, even to make your head to buy. Everybody will tell the price of oil has gone up, and that's why they're increasing. But we start to see the hike in the price of goods and services, and we also start to experience layoffs in the labor market. It is not a good place to be as a nation. So what I'm asking is that, how can we really harness Nigeria's true potential? We can't just be dependent on one impact. Why don't we reconsider what we already have? I'm not even saying go somewhere and create it. I just spoke about what the telecom sector did when we privatized and deregulated it. So I'm saying, why don't we just embrace digital transformation and use it to foster the innovation and economic growth we want to? And in that way, we can use it to affect every sector. There will be no limitation. Finance, insurance, agriculture, trade, but nobody will be left. Nobody will be left. It has that ability to do that and create that prosperous economy we're looking for. So stay with me and just imagine, consider that we have this country where small just farmers, all them small farmers, because when we say big farmers, we start thinking about big farms. If they actually had access to digital tools, just tools that give them access to real-time information. It could be market data. It could be even the price of cassava or yam or palm kernel. They have real-time data with their mobile phone. As they're going into that farmland to decide if you want to harvest or not, you can actually check the selling price. It has that ability to just unlock economic value at all these levels. Look at it also from the point of entrepreneurs. Just think about young entrepreneurs, and we'll come to that. Just having access to these technologies we've been mentioning. Professor Ike was talking about technologies like AI, which is quite rampant. A lot of us are using ChatGPT now for almost everything. AI, VR, cloud computing, it is turning businesses around. We will come to that. These technologies, the interesting thing is that they have the ability to even create jobs, not in the urban areas, from wherever you are. I have had people work for me that have not even seen. My first assistant worked for me for 2 years before I saw her. She was a first class student at community. I had never seen her, but she was my virtual assistant for 2 years. I have engineers that work for me from all over. We don't even know where they work from because we don't need to. That's what technology has the ability to create. So we can actually create in Nigeria when we just don't have these types of solutions, use it to innovate, but something I like to talk about. We also not just export talent, because that's what's been happening now, the brain drain. We want to also export our own products and services. We want to build companies that just don't produce and innovate for Nigeria, they can actually export. So I wanted to go ahead and Thank you very much. So let's talk about how other people have done it. Let's talk about some case studies. I chose 3 distinctive case studies because I thought it was interesting to also mix it up a bit. I chose one country that started way back before anybody saw it coming. It's a European country. I chose another one that decided to use it to influence all the agenda, every sector, even their national strategy. Then I finally went for someone I thought that mostly maybe looks like us, just totally dependent on oil, but is looking for a way out. And I thought it would give us a rounded viewpoint of how others have done it. So my first case study is Estonia. Estonia, I know some of you are wondering, what is Estonia? Very small. It's just the size of Togo, by the way. The population is just that of Swaziland. But the interesting thing about Estonia, it used to be part of what we call the Baltic States, Soviet Union. But sometime around just before the 80s, it was just totally dependent on the Soviet market. That's where because it was really doing a lot of agriculture. So it had all the stuff for the Soviet market. Then all of a sudden, of course, we knew that Soviet market and the Soviet Union ended up being Russia. And a lot of them started looking for a way out. Estonia decided to head for the free market. So in the late 90s, Estonia looked west. They joined the World Trade Organization, European Union, NATO, anything you can think of, because they were looking for ways to move from socialism, communism, to more liberal markets. I thought it was awesome. And one of the great things they did is that they used ICT to do that. They also used it to reform every angle of their policy. They went for strong rule of law, stable legislation, they focused on research and development, and they decided to open up their books, their country for business. Today as we speak, because I'm also trying not to, my time is counted. Today as we speak, in the past decade alone, Estonia's GDP is not evenly distributed, from being just predominantly dependent on agriculture. It's not fully, almost evenly distributed for the past 10 years. And Estonia seems to be one of the top players when it comes to digital transformation. Some of the things they did were things like e-government services. I know you say, oh, but we also have e-government services. I think the difference is that they focus on adoption. 99% of the country's companies created in Estonia are done online. 99% of banking transactions in Estonia is online. 98% of the people in Estonia will declare their tax income online. That's how far they've gone. We also have digital IDs, isn't it? National ID, they call theirs X-Road. 99% of Estonians have a digital ID. I'm just telling you how far they went. They focused on the digital economy, just using digital service and digital technology to drive the economy. So 99% of their public services today are entirely online. Everything to do. Broadband connectivity, from what we know, is 99% of the country. Then they went for privately held startups and innovation. They invested heavily in R&D. They don't have a lot of startups. That's the interesting thing. They just have about 1,400 or 450 startups. So compared to Nigeria, that's really small. But what I want to point out is that apart from all that, irrespective of the 1,450, they have about 10 of them that are unicorns. Unicorns means a company that is valued over $1 billion. That's how accurate they are at going for such companies. And they did that by going for what we call deep tech. So they are known as the Nordic Deep Tech Valley. So similar to what we say, Silicon Valley in the US. They went straight for deep tech, AI, advanced materials, blockchain, biotechnology, robotics. They actually attracted people in that sector. They did what we call e-residency, where they can actually allow you to start a company, manage your business online from wherever for Estonia. So this is some of the interesting things and timelines we have there they went through. And what did this result in? A efficiency, transparency in terms of government, because people file their taxes online, like we said. Innovation and entrepreneurship, they're able to attract talent from all over in that very small country. Global recognition as well, because now everybody they're synonymous with digital efficiency and innovation. The second one I would like to talk about is Finland. I'm sure people are wondering why she always going to Europe. Okay, before taking this job, I used to live in Europe, so maybe a lot of this is leaning towards there. But Finland for me is also interesting because Finland housed Nokia, and I worked for Nokia Siemens for 2 years. Similar, small, not very big, just at the periphery of the Western world, roughly the size of Congo. But post-World War II, they got into a quagmire. With the formation of Russia, they had to seize a lot of things. It cost them a lot of financial headaches. By 1980, because they were totally dependent a lot on agriculture, 9% of the country's cultivated area they had to give out, 11% of their forest they had to let go, 11% of their production facility they had to let go in that creation of Russia. So what did they do? They just leaned into ICT. ICT industries, mobile phone companies, that's why we hear about Nokia today. It fueled the entire economy of Finland. And now we can proudly say that their GDP is growing faster than OECD countries. And how did they do it? Let's just speak to some of the initiatives they did. One of the things they did, which I don't think it was sudden because it was subtle already, they had already started in many ways, is that they were promoting industrial policy, just to transition to high-tech economy. As early as the 1980s, they were already doing that. So what they were really focusing, just making sure it influenced some of the decisions they took. They created that ICT cluster in Finland. They created a master plan for it. Policy and R&D was very key. They were one of those governments we believe were even investing in startup and tech companies. So companies like Nokia actually benefited from the Finnish government. They used a combination of government, industry, science and labor. So they were very good at co-creating, collaborating with stakeholders to push that ICT industry in a way that they were shaping, coordinating, resourcing science and tech. And what they gained from it? Lots of things. They even created what they call TAKES. TAKES is what we call, it's almost akin to what we call TED Fund. You know, TED Fund, the government agency that actually helps fund the universities or research and development. But what they did differently is that when they created TAKES, TAKES was funding not just universities, polytechnics or academia, it was also funding enterprise. So they went for both. And by doing that alone, I think it's just 2009, TAKES had already invested, just in that 2009, 579 million euros, just in projects. 343 million was for enterprise, 263 million was for academia, universities, polytechnics, public research institutes. So it's good to think about it. You cannot just wake up one day and decide that you're going to be a leader. You need to have a game plan. As a result of some of these policies, they've enjoyed high economic growth, and they are one of the 4 most competitive countries when it comes to economy amongst the EU members. Some of the impacts for them is that they've now diversified in the fact that they now have 3 strongholds in terms of their GDP contribution. It's now ICT, metal, and the paper industries, as opposed to what they had before. I really wanted to speak to some of the things they did, but we would tag along because a lot of things they did, smart cities, digital health. The Finnish government has been very, very, very intentional in pushing ICT. But I want to talk about someone I think that is close to us, because in many ways I think Saudi is almost close to us in some of their issues as well. A lot of people might, like many years and for lots of years, everybody saw Saudi as a closed market. I also saw Saudi as a closed market. I think what opened my eyes was when I started working for Facebook and I had to head Middle East and Africa. So it required that I had to travel a lot. And I had to go to the Middle East a lot, all 19 countries of the GCC. My reservations were thrown out of the window. That was the first place I got the fastest and easiest visa. as a Nigerian passport holder. So one of the things we know Saudi for is that they're one of the largest economies in the Middle East. They do have 15% of the world's oil reserve. 40% of their youths are less than 25, so very similar to Nigeria. The population is not like us, they're just 34 million. We are over 200 million. They have one of the largest GDP in the Middle East, but just like us, their main source of GDP is oil. It contributes to over half of Saudi's GDP. So what did Saudi do? Oh, by the way, they're also Muslim majority, so maybe that we could find some similarity there because the others are more European. In 2016, because this came from the top, Saudi created a plan they called Vision 2030. I don't know if anybody has heard of that Vision 2030. It was actually chaired or conceived by the Crown Prince, His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman. So what he did was focus his reform on three major pillars. He wanted reforms in the public sector, in the economy, and in the society as a whole. But what he wanted to do was push a thriving economy, and he wanted to do that by unlocking the potential of non-oil sector. So his intention was to diversify the economy of Saudi from oil. It's more recent. I'm sure you'll be saying 2016, how far? It's just, how many? 7 years. But it's interesting to note that as we speak today, since 2016, their GDP for non-oil sectors already moved from 40% to 45%. So they seem to be doing something. Maybe you can say, oh, the impact is still too early. Yes, I still think it's too early to judge. But in the past 5 years, people and everybody knows that Saudi is really transforming. A lot of you must have heard about, now women can drive in Saudi. Prior to when I went, I was told you can't even have men and women in the same location for events like this. You have to separate them. And also in offices. So Saudi had social issues. Because of the dependence on oil and maybe cultural issues, they actually had productivity issues, even worse than Nigeria. So work ethic among young people, it was like really low. They lacked skilled labor because everybody was looking up to oil. Saudians or people from Saudi think that blue collar work is diminishing, so they leave that to the migrant workers. So that has always affected their productivity. In Saudi, the state is predominantly in control of everything. So allocation of resources, everything, distribution of goods, services, products. We talk about quotas here. Go to Saudi and you see them talk about quotas. Then also, Saudi has also struggled because it's also a religious destination. And they really are struggling with creating that free liberal market, globalizing, opening up, and still maintaining and preserving their culture. So people from Saudi really struggle with cultural change. They're struggling with how to integrate to the free market because most of them perceive that as a threat to their culture. So they do have issues. They're not perfect. But what they've done with that 2030 is that they've been intentional and they've created programs. They have key initiatives in the SME. Some people must have heard of the NEOM project. The city they're building, the NEOM City project. Digital infrastructure, they are going in. Saudi is one place that I've seen that you can put up a structure. The only limitation is time. You just tell them how much is it going to cost. That structure will be put up. They are so bent on catching up. E-government services, like I told you, that was the fastest place I got a visa. When they first told me, I was reluctant. I'm like, I don't want to go there and you send me back. No, come madam, we will give you the visa at that. They told me I was going to be given a visa on arrival. I really doubted it. I called all the embassies in London, all the embassies in Ireland. But true to their word, I got there, the lady opened the computer. 20 minutes later, I had my visa and I walked away. Digital economy promotion. Saudi actually went ahead and created their own investment arm. I don't know if anybody have heard of the Saudi Venture Capital, where they intentionally invested non-oil sector because they want to grow that digital economy. Digital skills development all around the places. They are bent on actually educating, creating digital literacy amongst their population. Now, I keep saying that the impact, it might be too early, but there's already some perceived impact. If I quote McKinsey, if Saudi continues on this journey, it is believed that over 70% of this revenue can end up being non-oil by 2030. If Saudi continues on this journey, it is believed that that issue they have with productivity, the private sector is likely going to rise from providing 19% of their workforce to probably 58%, because now it's the public sector that does that. I'm sure the timekeeper is saying, Akwala pins akwa. Loosely translated, have we been grounded yet? Have we landed? We are getting there. We will soon land. Hanging with me. If I look at the challenges for Nigeria, so what is preventing us from being viable with digital transformation? I would say we have two, maybe I'll lean into three. One, we actually do need an educated workforce. Not just education, that people have degrees. Because if people have degrees and still afraid of technology, digital literacy is important. We need capital. We cannot say that enough. Institutions like this that are the bedrock of research and innovation should not be struggling for funds. Thirdly, I think we need institutional reforms. And I will clarify as I go further. But don't lose faith. I don't think all is lost. If we embrace this viewpoint, like I said, there is potential. There's potential in agriculture, smart farming. And I keep saying that because I like to tell stories. I'm just imagining my uncle. My uncle is called Daily, my father's younger brother. He goes to the Ugu, my farm, from where I am in Umwana, local government, in Imo State. I imagine him using his mobile app, like I said, to access real-time weather data and market prices before deciding to harvest his palm kernel fruit. We are known for palm kernel fruit where I'm from. I imagine large farms like Baba Gona, one of the world's largest farming operations, actually a collective large farm with over 140,000 acres of maize farmlands. They pulled together over 80,000 member farmers to form it. So I imagine farms like that being able to remotely monitor their farms by a surveillance and a camera surveillance system with night vision. And the fact that they can do it, but do it from anywhere. So you own the farm, you don't have to be in the farm to monitor it. You can even travel to the US and monitor your farm there. I imagine the fact that they can sell their produce online on a digital platform. The logistics will be done even from there. I imagine the fact that they would have IoT devices, these IoT sensors that's planted in the soil to track the rudiments and the quality of the soil and determine what the yield and actually forecast the yield for that crop harvest. And this is not, please, it's not rocket science. These things actually exist. Some of them are being piloted, but I think we could do more. Think about the financial services and the financial fintech revolution going on. We talked about the flutter waves and the payment platforms and the payment gateway, but we can still do more. Because as per the last 2 years, we have said that the fintech sector has attracted the most or the largest VC funding in Africa, and Nigeria drives 33% of that. So think about what we could do if we actually now focus on using technology to drive the financial services sector. Education won't be left. Healthcare won't be left. Those are places we can apply it. An interesting one I'd like to speak to, permit me, is also the creative sector. Everybody knows us for Nollywood. Everybody knows. You go to all the small islands, and once you say you're Nigerian, they'll start telling you about movie actors and movie actresses they know. I personally can boast that I know one, without calling names. I'll just look in one direction and she gets it. But you could consider what we could do today using AI technology to that creative industry. Things like automating tax, script analysis, video editing, CGI generation. I'm sure my videographers, pressmen here can understand what I'm talking about. We can do that today using AI. We can do that not to take away the creativity from the sector, but to enhance and make it more effective. There's actually a Pricewaterhouse report for 2022 that says that the media sector in Nigeria has the potential to contribute over 8 billion to our GDP. We just need to think about leaning towards digitizing it. So Akwala bins now, so we can now ease on. So you can ease on Akwala bins. Let's talk about the way forward. And this is my recommendation. Sometimes when I say this, I pinch myself because people they're like, you're talking to yourself because now you're part of the government. So you just say it to yourself. But no, I'm saying, let's view this masquerade. That means we're not viewing it alone. It's not only the government. You're also viewing it with me. The academics, the industry, the academia, we're all going to view this masquerade together. I think this part might actually be leaning towards the government. We do need a holistic and integrated digital strategy, not where just few agencies are the one leaning into pushing digitization. Think about all those things I said, Vision 2030, UAE has their own, UAE 2021. These are all ways where they take it from the top and they run it all the way down. So I think Nigeria needs to think that way. Infrastructure, you definitely need digital infrastructure. You cannot drive innovation using digital services without infrastructure. A country like Nigeria, we have only 11 data centers. South Africa, I think they have about 36 data centers. And data centers are just centers for hosting data in the cloud. And most countries like to host it in country. It makes it efficient for transmission. So we can definitely do better. I just told us about how the mobile internet changed everything. Created, I don't know if it's affordable or tongue-in-cheek, but access to internet and mobility is there. But we can actually do more. Nigeria still has a penetration rate of 50%. So that means this whole large, massive country I've been talking about, only 50% in terms of penetration. We, as a government, have committed, I'm now holding us accountable, and we want to make it 70% by 2025. So hold us accountable. We did put out a national broadband plan, and we said that we want 80% of the population to have coverage. You cannot do what I'm saying without infrastructure, digital infrastructure. We said our goal is to make sure that rural areas, because the truth is that Nigeria is not Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja. Nigeria is my village in Umuwala, the middle of nowhere in Sokoto, or someplace we don't know at the edges of Bakassi. That is Nigeria. A huge part of activity still resides in the rural areas. So we need to provide rural coverage. And we as a ministry, at least my ministry, the Federal Ministry of Communication, Information and Innovation and Digital Economy, we are committed. We have created agencies and we've started work, not to say we've not started. I don't know, nobody knows any, okay, my NICOM South people would know. I don't know if you guys have heard of Project 774, at least I can tease that out here. So Project 774 was a project that commenced in February this year. It's driven by the Honorable Minister of Communication, Innovation and Digital Economy, Dr. Bosu Tijani, is to provide access in the 774 local governments of Nigeria. That project will be run across 3 years. So you can imagine if we even give the secretariats access, it might even give the citizens access to public services digitally. So we still have work to do. I'm not saying we've done the work. We still need to focus on institutional reforms. It's still not there. Nigeria needs a governance where all persons, institutions, entities, private and public sector, including the state itself, are accountable to laws that are publicly promulgated, equally enforced, independent, and which is consistent in terms of international human rights principles. Because that's the problem sometimes foreign investors have coming here. People worry that when they come here, anything applies. And the truth is that if you want to do it right, think about Estonia and their rule of law. We need to start putting round pegs in round hole when it comes to our government agencies. Because when we do that, and that's the truth, when we have qualified bureaucrats who are also politically interested, we can drive change through governance and policy. It will just make the job easier. We need to fund research. I think I cannot say that enough. I wanted to put up a chart there, but I think they didn't put it up, to show how much we've spent on TED Fund since 2011. Oh, thank you very much. Now compare it to those countries I was telling you, countries like Finland, how much they are spending on research. You can now wake up and say that all of a sudden you have been left out. Why are we not called when it comes to artificial intelligence? Why is our name not heard when it comes to IoT and machine learning? We have to change the way we move the money. We have to invest. You cannot expect people to all of a sudden figure it out. You haven't created the environment. So things like TED Fund, I would echo it louder. Things like NSTF. And maybe beyond that, I think one of the things I've learned from these countries is that they've also learned how to get funding from the private sector. It doesn't always have to be from the government or public sector. Lean into the industry to get funding. And when we do that, we'll be able to do some of those things we've said, like digital literacy and all that. We need to create an environment where we can empower people and create jobs. I say this because post-COVID, we started to notice a lot of brain drain. And if you see and ask, the people that are going are the very smart ones. It's the same engineers, smart medical professionals that we need to come and drive the technology sector, the economy. Those are the ones, it's so easy for them to go. And to stop this brain drain means that we have to be more strategic. You know, what are we doing to keep them? That's the real question. Because they will go if you don't give them a reason to stay. They will follow the money, like they say. So we have to start investing in the young ones. Give them a reason to stay. And finally, something I'm very passionate about and my minister is very passionate about is public-private partnership. Like I said, we cannot do that alone. The government cannot do that alone. We need to be more intentional in pulling the private sector along together. See what they did, I mentioned it was in Finland, that they took both government, private sector, they took all the stakeholders to drive the ICT sector. So it's clear that it can be done. Not that it cannot be done. It might have started, but you have to be intentional to keep doing it. So in conclusion, I think we can acknowledge that, thank you very much. We have acknowledged that we have viewed this very eminent mom from this lens of digitizing. We want to drive that economic growth to digital transformation and not just lean into a single driver economy. Case in point, we do that and it's win-win for everyone. But I want to also acknowledge that our pathway to diversification, economic growth, apart from being intentional, is actually unique to us. It doesn't have to be like those case studies I rolled out. We are a nation that must adapt to our own realities. So there are many ways we can frame it, but we also frame it through our own lens. Nigeria can actually leverage digital transformation as a powerful tool for economic diversification, job creation, and shared prosperity. Thank you for listening.
Can we have a thunderous applause to celebrate the guest lecturer for this year's Herbert Macaulay Memorial Lecture? Wow! The first female guest lecturer of the Herbert Macaulay Lecture. Please put your hands together for her. Wow! We appreciate so much the Managing Director and CEO Nigerian Communications Satellite. She deserves another applause. Yes. And if it was possible for a chieftaincy title to be conferred by a master of ceremony, I could possibly say that she can be addressed as Chief Engineer Mrs. Jane Egerton. Please put your hands together, Idehen. Put your hands together for her. Thank you so much. And so, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a very wonderful time with you. But I have to very respectfully recognize the presence of these persons, eminent personalities who are here. I'd like to recognize the presence of Professor C.I. Ame of the Department of Electronic Engineering. Please, can we applaud him? Let me also recognize the Director of Lion Gadgets, Reverend Father Dr. Anoliefo is right here with us, and we appreciate the presence. Please put your hands together and celebrate him. We also have an amiable professor from the Faculty of Education right here with us, Professor Uche Nzewi. We are pleased to have you. Let me also recognize a member of the Governing Council and the University Mace Bearer right here with us, Professor Emeka Joshua Umifekwem. Please put your hands together for him. And of course, we have the Kingsmen, or rather the Kingswomen as well, of the guest lecturer here, talking about the Imo People's Forum, who are also Kingsmen and Kingswomen of the Dean of the Faculty. So may we put our hands together for the Imo People's Forum. And the chairman is here, talking about Professor Zef Joko. And it will also interest you to know that we have a long list of members from the Imo People's Forum who are here, and as well as Imo Professors Forum, your most recognized.